Aren't you mic'd? Or just,
I'm not the star.
I see.
There we go. Okay. We're here. It's February 12th, 2012, at the wonderful Calamus bookstore with the owner, John Mitzel. And this is a kind of an oral history project for the History Project. Tony Grima is behind the camera. My name is Mark Krone. And we're just going to chat with John and ask John to relate some of his life for the History Project. You're originally from a town outside Cincinnati?
Well, I was born in Cleveland, grew up outside of Cleveland, and after my parents divorced in '58, I moved with my mother to Cincinnati and grew up there until I was 17, and then I came to Boston.
And did you like Cincinnati? What?
Cincinnati's a beautiful city. It's a very conservative and right-wing city. Physically, it's very beautiful, but it's... Mark Twain's great line is, when the world ends, you want to be in Cincinnati. Everything happens there 10 years later. He's right.
You arrived in Boston in 1965?
That's correct.
And why Boston?
I'd been here on my little college tour, and I wanted to go to college in Boston, and so when I ran away from home in '65, and it was a long and confusing year, we won't go into that, but I thought, well, it was either going to be Santa Monica or Boston, and I thought, well, the East Coast is more interesting, and it is, for me.
And did you go to college in Boston?
I did. I went to BU, studied with Howard Zinn and others. It was a difficult time for the academy back then in the late '60s. There were always demonstrations, and in the late '60s and early '70s, I took a year off and went to New York, studied there for a while, and then came back to BU and finished up in '71, and bomb threats and whatnot. I was just crazy beyond belief.
The graduation in 1970 at BU was canceled because of that, wasn't it? Or around there?
It was after Nixon invaded Cambodia, I believe. That is true.
Were you always a writer?
Starting at age 6, my mother sent me a photo of me at the typewriter on his old Underwood typewriter. Here I am pounding out stories. So.
And what did you write about?
Well, what I knew, which wasn't much at 6, but I kept it up. And I have no gift as a singer or a musician or a painter, so I write.
And when you came here in the mid-'60s and were here in the late '60s, did you go to the bars?
Yes.
Which ones?
Well, officially back then you had to be 21 to drink, as you do now. Though again, everything changed. It was when I turned 21, they dropped it to 18, of course. So I thought, oh, bad timing. But I went to the Punch Bowl before it closed. I go to the other side. I go to Sporters. Whatever was around. Jacques, I like Jacques. Still around. I think the only one still around. Shad the Eagle. This was later in the '70s. So it was fun. There was a wide open bar scene then. And they didn't card you.
What do you suspect are the differences between the bar scene now and then?
Well, I'm not familiar with the bar scene now, since I go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. There's fewer options, and people don't drink as much as they used to either. I mean, people did get sloppy drunk, and I did too on occasion, but it's less an alcoholic culture in the gay world. And I guess that's a good development, because some men can't handle it at all. I could. And but since the bars have always been such a central place where really the gay movement came out of, and I remember in '77, was it 77? We had one of the organizational gay pride meetings was over at 1270, which was a bar over in the Fenway area, and so you know, they had a social function as well as a recreational function.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if other people do, but I associate you with some other people, Charlie Shively and Michael Bronski, and
Right.
perhaps others. How did you get to sort of be in the literary gay culture and when you got here in Boston, or when did that start to happen?
Well, we all met. Well, I think I met Charlie at a student homophile league meeting at BU. In 70, 71, there were various little gay groups on campuses, but they decided to merge them all for a Friday night function at the Sherman Union at Boston University, where I was attending. So we all met there, and it was a wonderful mix of people, and it was the 70s, the beginning of the 70s, and so it was like a little flower power, a little this, a little, nitty gritty. And I think I met Charlie then, and we decided that we had to have newspapers and other community groups, and there was a gay health group that was set up. I can't remember the name of it, but it sort of segued into what's now Fenway Community Health. Homophile Community Health Program or something, I can't remember. It's 40 years ago. So Charlie, who's very good at this, found a bunch of the gay boys and then some of the women, and we published, I believe, in, was it 71? It wouldn't have been 70, it would have been 71. Lavender Vision, which was a 69 paper. This side was men's, you'd flip it over, and this side was women's, so it was half and half. And there was just one issue of that, and the women decided they didn't want to do that anymore. They wanted their own paper. And I think they put out a Lavender Vision too, which is all women. So we went ahead and started Fag Rag in 71, and it came out quarterly for about 10 years and then sort of fell off schedule, but it didn't matter. But that's how we met all these other writers and whatnot, started writing for Fag Rag. And then when Gay Community News came along in 73, we all wound up writing for them as well. So you just wind up meeting all these people. Everyone's a writer in Boston, so it's just, it's a natural. I think I met Bronsky in 73 or 74, so that was a little later.
And how did Fag Rag get its special irreverence and anarchistic kind of feel?
Well, that was mostly Charlie, but it also was very much the temper of the times. It was a little fuck you. It was a little in-your-face sexuality, nice meditations. It was an oddball thing when we'd sit down deciding what to put into the paper. Lots of poetry. We did a lot of poetry. Interesting, the people we published, when you look back. Manifestos now and then. Manifesto de jour. And we got some good graphic people to do the covers finally. The problem with text people is they're just text heavy, and they sometimes don't have an eye for graphic design or the allure of a good graphic. So finally, Michael and others came in, not Bronsky, Michael Thompson and others came in and said, look guys, you got to break up this text, And so we had some artists and photographers, and it made the paper better over the long run.
You had kind of a coup in 1973, I think it was. You interviewed Gore Vidal at the Ritz.
That's right.
How did that get started?
Well, oh dear, that's a good question. Tom Reeves, a friend of mine, Steve Abbott, a friend of mine, and I. Vidal was in town for on a book tour. I forget what the book was. Kalki. No, it wasn't Kalki. It was it Burr or something? I can't remember. Maybe it was Burr. And he was staying at the Ritz, and I had a friend whose mother worked at the Ritz. And I said, "Could you get me the phone number?" And so she did. So I gave him a call and dropped off a Fag Rag, which we had a piece in about Myra Breckenridge. And he said, "Sure, I'll give you an hour and meet me down at the restaurant at the Ritz." So we did, and we went and taped. It was fun.
You wrote a book later on, Myra and Gore.
Yes.
What was that?
Well, it was the original essay from Fag Rag about Myra Breckenridge, putting it sort of within a feminist context. Hard to do. And then we reprised the interview. So it was just those two documents.
I recall in reading the interview that Charlie Shively took exception to Gore Vidal's alleged elitism. I think he said at one point, "I was not born middle class, thank God." Vidal.
Well, that's Charlie being Charlie. Gore Vidal never went to college, and Charlie's a PhD from Harvard, so this elitism issue seems to be somewhat disingenuous.
I wanted to make sure to ask you about the Gay Pride rally. I think it was the same year where Charlie Shively burned some things.
Yes. It was 1977, and the year of Anita Bryant, who, as Gore said, sings the battle hymn of the Republic whenever asked.
And what was that rally like?
Well, it was, Charlie and I had been involved with organizing the Gay Pride rally since we had the first one in '71, which wasn't a rally, it was just a little march of like 200 people. And then the next year there were a few more, and then da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But, it was never more than like 500 people, 600 people. And 76 we wound up in the Common, and maybe it was 800 or maybe 1,000 people. And we had the speakers and Elaine Noble and that sort of stuff. But then Anita Bryant came along, and homosexuals are child molesters, and they should be fired from teaching, blah, blah. So all these people poured out of the closet. And Charlie and I had been on the organizing committee of the Boston Gay Pride March longer than anyone. So we thought, well, let's do this one in big colors this year, So we got him to be the primary speaker, and there must have been 5,000, 8,000 people, maybe 10, I don't know who's counting. But suddenly we had this long, big, huge crowd, and we marched up and down, around through the Back Bay, and then wound up at the Parkman Bandstand on the Boston Common, where we had been the last year. And Charlie's an anarchist by philosophy, and he was wearing his Harvard gown, his mortarboard and pestle, whatever you get when you graduate from Harvard, which he still had. And Freddie, also on the fag staff, Freddie Greenfield, was there just in a pair of cut-off jean shorts, holding this big Chinese wok, which was filled with lighter fluid. Charlie and I had gone over this very delicately before everything happened. And he gave his speech, which we printed in Fag Rag, and David Freuberg recorded for WGBH. Tape copy of which I still have, though I don't know what you do with tapes anymore. And Charlie said, I forget the sequence here, but basically I have here a document from the University of Massachusetts. He just moved from Boston College, not Boston College, Boston State College, had been merged with UMass. And I asked to teach a gay course, history of gay, lesbian, whatever history. And they said I wasn't qualified. Here's that letter. And of course, Freddie lit the thing. He threw the letter in there, and everyone applauded. And he said, well, today on our parade, we walk back the John Hancock, all the insurance companies, and this, that, and the other. And they won't give gay couples insurance, or whatever the line was. And I have here my John Hancock insurance company. Boom. And we walked past the banks, and and the banking system, I forget what the complaint was, but this, that, and the other. And he took a dollar bill and burnt it, a federal crime. And we walked past the Massachusetts State House, and here, within the Massachusetts state laws, homosexuality, under Chapter 272, and he just took them and threw their applause all the way around. And as the applause died down, I think everyone knew what was coming, because there's this crescendo. If a man also lieth with a man as he lieth with a woman, well, everyone knew instantly. And Charlie had asked me prior to this event, he said, should I just take the pages of Leviticus and rip them out and throw them in? I said, Charlie, after you've burned all this other stuff, that would look tame. Just take the whole Bible and throw it in there. So the flames went up, and the Bible went in. Now, I was running around with a bullhorn because I was sort of executive director of the outfit, and Charlie was up there and his mortarboard. I mean, the whole thing's surreal. And the fag rate contingent was off over here, and right next to them was the dignity contingent, the gay Catholics. And Brian McNaught was in town, and he was outraged. The Bible had just been thrown in. It's a small point to note, but it was a St. James Bible. It was, I mean, it was, what are the Protestants?
King James.
I'm sorry, King James Bible, St. James, not a saint yet. King James Bible. It wasn't Douay Bible, which is what the Catholics use, I believe. I'm not up with all these things. I'm not a religious. And so I just throw the whole goddamn thing in. And what was funny was, and this wound up in the news later that night, somehow the burning Bible got brushed out of the walk and wound up on the ground. And there's this very sweet old queen who I knew from the store, or from the porno cinema actually, when I ran the porno cinema. And he was stamping on the Bible to put the flames out. So when I went home at 11 o'clock during the news, there was this poor queen stamping on the Bible. Not only did the gay people burn the Bible, they hadn't stamped on it. I thought, well, good news reporting there. The best part of this story, I don't care, you know, as Charlie pointed out, 6 months after the controversy died down, he said, I did with my Bible what I wanted to. Anyone else can do with theirs what they want to. Everyone missed the point. Anyway, the gay Christians were marching down to the Parkman bandstand, and it's on the tape, kill him, get him off, kill him, get him off. So I thought, gay pride indeed. On the bandstand was Elaine Noble, then a state rep, my friend Max Maven, a mentalist, a genius guy, a magician, mentalist, all that sort of stuff. And then Sharon Bright, or someone who was supposed to do the big rah, 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 you know, dance number at the end. And Charlie turned to Elaine Noble and said, Elaine, the Christians, I can hear them. They're marching up here to kill me. What could I do? She said, get out of this place as fast as you can. So then he went up to Max Maven, the mentalist. Max is cool as a cucumber. And Charlie said to him, Max, the Christians are coming down here to kill me. What could I do? And Max said, for $10,000, I can make them disappear. Well, they didn't kill him, but his life was made miserable because he burnt one Bible. Anyway, that set off a brouhaha for the next 6 months of gay community news, believe me. Ministers writing, how dare you burn the Bible? And what he was doing was imitating, William Lloyd Garrison had burnt the Constitution, I believe, in Concord in 1852 or 3 or something. We talked about this, I can't remember all this. But that was a famous episode when, obviously, as a protest to slavery in America, or parts of America, Garrison had a big rally, and he held up the Constitution, he lit it and burnt it. Well, that set them off too, so. It's nice that something still works every once in a while.
You were, during this time, your day job was projectionist at the South Station Cinema.
I worked there from the day it opened as a gay cinema in May 1st, 1972, the day J. Edgar Hoover died, until it closed in 1983, when the building was sold. May 1st, 1972, George McGovern was running for the Democratic nomination for president, which he did get. And I remember I had the radio on. I get a lot of news from the radio, surprisingly. And after Hoover died, and I always remember this because you never hear something like this in American political discourse. Someone rushed up to George McGovern. He was on the fly somewhere. Someone rushed up and said, Senator McGovern, J. Edgar Hoover's died. And McGovern said, what a relief. They don't talk like that anymore. What a relief. You son of a bitch. And fag had to celebrate the occasion with just a small piece. It says, "Hoover goes underground." Awful man. Yes, I worked there all those years. It was quite interesting. It was the beginning of gay men's pornography in the cinemas in Boston. We had events over there the years. I remember Rosa von Braunheim came here to screen. It was in '77. It was during the Boston Boise stuff, maybe '78. His thing there, so it was turned into a benefit. And then we had a benefit for something else. This weird combination. I mean, that's what the '70s was about. It's sort of wide open, anything goes, not strictly formatted. No, you can't do that, this sort of thing. It was interesting once. It was a twin screen. And I remember the booker, my friend George Mansour, he had sort of the Jack DeVoe stuff. This was before the formula stuff came around in the '80s. And then there were some black movies over here. So black gay guys. And so we did those there and the white gay guys here. And our customer base was almost exclusively white. And so when we put on the black movie, all the white guys just left and went over to the other one. They didn't want to watch black men having sex. I thought, if I were a sociologist, scribble, scribble, scribble. But it was odd.
There must have been some wild things in that movie theater at times.
Well, we didn't have anyone die. When I worked at the North Station Cinema briefly after the South Station closed, there was a gentleman who actually died in there. We had a gentleman who had a heart attack once at the South Station. It wasn't fatal, but we had to call the 911. But at the North Station, we had made one of the little storerooms there into an intimacy suite. And it was my day off, actually, but I came in the next day, and in the projection room, there was this lovely Vicuna coat. What's this all about? And my colleague, John, said, well, we had a guy die in the intimacy suite. And the wife called. She said she's coming to pick up today. So she did. She came in. I introduced myself. She said, that's my husband's coat. I said, there it is. She said, thank you very much. And she left.
Well, this brings us to a time when you were walking down the street and you were near the Pilgrim Theater, I believe, and something was going on.
Yes.
What year was this?
Oh, dear. Many moons ago. Okay. 70s. 70s, 80s, 70s. I had a small distribution company with David Peterson, as we mentioned earlier, the person who organized the founding of the Gay Community News. Dave and I were very good friends. There were all these little gay publications that were around at the time. Boyd McDonald, Straight to Hell, Drummer, GCN, Sojourner, Fag Rag, blah, 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 blah. And all little nickel and dime things, but there was no general distribution. So David said, let's set up a little company to distribute them. So we did, and we got a lot of them out. A lot of schlepping in shopping bags. And so I was going down there to Washington News, whatever it was. It's a big adult entertainment center. I don't think they had the peep shows, maybe they did. But lots of magazines and books and, lubes and inflatable dolls and things, whatever. And I knew the guy there quite well. He's quite sweet. He would disappear every 6 months and go to prison for obscenity violations or whatever he had in Boston back then. So I dropped off the fag rags of the Gay Community News and whatever. And I came out and I ran into this queen I knew who'd been in the Pilgrim all night. Some people find it residential. And I said, well, what happened? There were still like a couple cop cars there. And I said, what happened? He said, well, they found someone dead up in the second balcony. And I said, oh. What's that all about? He says, well, I think he's a priest. Story got better already. And so I went in and talked to my friend in the bookstore, and I said, what happened? He said, about 3 in the morning, I think they were open 24/7, I don't remember. So about 3 in the morning, ambulance showed up, and they took this guy out. He was in rigor mortis. They had to break his bones to flatten him out, and on and on. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. So I went back to talk to my other friend, and he said, I think, because he was there all the time, he said, I saw this guy all the time, and I think he's a priest from the South Shore. Telegraph, telephone, telequeen. And so I don't know what bee got in my bonnet, but I thought, well, let's go after this one a bit. So the next day in the Herald and the Globe, there were these big obituaries. Father Sweeney, Father McDonough, whatever, McDonough, had died at helping the nuns make the dinner for the poor and the whatever in some parish in Quincy. That's it. So I went up to City Hall. I got the death certificate for a Father McDonough who had died on that day, and he in fact had died at the what was the name of the theater?
Pilgrim.
Pilgrim. I used to call it the Palace. Pilgrim. So I wrote a piece for GCN, Dead Priest Found in Porno Palace. And what was interesting about the Globe article is not only that they lie about his place of death, but the picture they ran was his cousin, not him. And the picture was of the city councilor from Boston. Lots of McDonoughs. So GCN reproduced the death certificate, and I told everything as a straight story. 3:30 in the morning, found, police came, attended this, that, and the other. Served at the holy parish of, Bleeding Palms or whatever. And it was just straight facts. Well, again, another tsunami hit GCN. How dare you? Da, 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 da. Well, the Globe had everything wrong. They had the picture wrong, the date of death wrong, the place of death wrong. And no one complained to them, I presume. And I just tell the truth. And, you get whacked on in the head all the time. So that's what we say as a learning experience. Mother told me never to tell the truth. I think she's probably right.
Glad Day Bookshop. That comes, you worked there, you were manager of the bookshop after the movie projection jobs?
Yes, after all the movie theaters I worked for closed, and they all have closed, I've been a volunteer at Glad Day for years, ever since Jerry opened. We were old friends. And he opened the first one here at Brownfield Street in '79. And I was up there every day, helping out, doing whatever I could do. I mean, sort of lonely, and it was a small shop. We got along very well. And then when the North Station Cinema closed as well, a buyout thing, they were developing the property. Excuse me. So I went to work for Gerald. By that time, it was on Winter Street. Brownfield Street, of course, had been burnt out. Arson, fire, getting rid of GCN and the bookshop at the same time, and all the artists that lived there. It's horrible. And so I started in August of '84 and was there, and then we moved in '87 to Back Bay, which is a wonderful location. Wonderful location, but with its downsides. And was there until it closed in June of 2000. And it was fun. A lot of work. It was fun. Made a lot of money, the store. And the internet came along, and Amazon and all that, and that took a whack out of everything. Lots of events. There was one. Well, there were many that I remember. There was one. There was a woman whose name I cannot remember who had a video, back when we had videos, video cassettes. It was called How to Female Ejaculate. My colleague then, Jeffrey, said, well, grammatically this isn't correct. It's a split infinitive. How to female ejaculate. I said, Jeffrey, it's just show business. So they'd call New Words and other stores, can we do a presentation? No. No. So finally, so call Glad Day, they'll do anything. So she called us. She said, I have a little video demonstration here, and it's mostly baby dykes, but we'll get 60 of them, and maybe they'll buy something. Will you do it? I said, of course. So we had to move all this stuff around and set up the chairs and blah, blah, blah. And we had a little video monitor, videotape thing. She came in. I forget her name. It's awful. I'm not good with names anymore. I only met her the once. So she went into the powder room. She'd come in sort of plain clothes, 50-year-old woman, and she came out looking this ravishing sort of Las Vegas showgirl type, all made up, hair and the gown and whatnot. And all the baby dice came in. She knew her audience exactly, and we probably got like 50 or 60 of them. And of course, the all-male staff sort of just stood there on the side looking. So she popped it and she did her rap about, how to ejaculate and how to have your orgasm and whatever. And so they were ever so appreciative. And then John Lawrenson came in once, and there was a queer conference. John hates the word queer. But John had just done something over in England on Channel 4, the independent channel, about AIDS contrarians. This was 1990. And he had the video cassette, and he wanted to show it at the queer conference. And they wouldn't let him, which I thought odd. So he said, well, can we have the event at Glad Day? I said, well, sure. So we advertised it a bit, and he put the word out. This is before email. Hard to imagine a world. Anyway, like 25 people showed up just to see the video. And it was quite good. So it's just like when everyone else says no, we says yes. So it was fun. Then we had the Greg Louganis event, the biggest event I've ever hosted in my life. I don't think Gerald was there. Gerald Moldenhauer was the owner. And I think he was up in Toronto because he has the store. He had the store in Toronto then. So he called me up. Make sure you have enough books. It's going to be a huge event because he'd been on Louganis had been on Oprah and he'd been Time Magazine, People Magazine, everything. And it was the weirdest thing. It must have been that good angel day on the shoulder, because I had ordered 500 books, and we had 499 customers. And they all brought teddy bears. Louganis, on one of his Oprah appearances or something, it said that he had a foundation or something. He gives toys to kids in hospitals. So everyone bought a teddy bear. And so I had 499 teddy bears stuffed in the office in the back. And Greg happily had 2 assistants with him. And so I said to one, I said, what the fuck do we do with the teddy bears? He said, we'll be around in half an hour with a truck and pick them up. We're used to this. It was a wonderful event. He was a wonderful man. And thank God we didn't run out of books. There would have been a riot. So it was a good time. I learned a lot about the business, but of course the business changes all the time. And then I opened this place up, and 3 or 4 months after Glad Day went down.
One of your quotes that I read was, people create the bookstores not available to them when they were young.
Well, in my mission statement, I quote George Orwell, who said, people write the books they can't find on library shelves. And so I'm sort of paraphrasing him. I'm reading the Christopher Brown book, the Outlaws thing, which is wonderful. And in the Economist review, which I just read this morning, they make the point that what's sort of unique, unlike the feminist revolution and the black revolution, with the gay struggle is that when you grow up, you think, I'm the only one. And for most of the people of our generation, and maybe the young ones too, although the internet has changed everything, your way to access the community was through books. You go to the library and hunt for those books. Found a few of them here and there. So I think that's what gave the impetus to the great, in the late 60s and certainly through the 70s, this great impulse, this this gushing really of gay and lesbian writing. Because that's how people were formatted. This is what it means to us. This is how it's changed our lives. This is how we connected as a community. But no, these things didn't exist before Craig Rodwell in '68 opened Oscar Wilde Memorial Bookstore. So the whole concept is really rather new. It's just a generation old, 40 years.
You wrote The Boston Sex Scandal.
I did. I didn't live it. I wrote it.
Why did you write that book? What was that about?
Well, I'd been covering all these events for Gay Community News and as an activist through the Boston Boys Committee. Well, it just seemed such a perfect outrage and a sort of standard template for American witch hunts. I studied history at Boston University and governmental science, political poli-sci, whatever they call it now. And there's these patterns of witch hunts and how power elites go after unpopular minorities for their own benefit. And this seemed to fit that exactly. Sort of the old Irish Guard taking on homosexual men who have sex with teenage boys. And they figured, well, this is an easy one, just roll it right over. Didn't work that way. So they rolled out all their arrests and whatnot. So I did some snooping around on other things, and this was in the press at the time, and lots of other cases, married men having sex with 15-year-old boys, and so apparently not uncommon. And the differences in adjudication of these various crimes. So it was fascinating. So I sort of rewrote it and put it together as a book. And I was just reading it the other day. After 30 years, it still sort of holds up as a sort of, not quite Zola, J'accuse, but pretty close.
Was Sports and the Macho Male, 1973, was that your first book? I don't associate you writing a book about sports.
Well, it was an essay. It started as an essay, and then I expanded it. And it's been anthologized 2 or 3 times, I think. Well, you can only deal with so much football in life. So I had to say my piece. So that was it. Never again. But the sports world is full of so many odd and funny people. Different then than it is now, because there's so much more money involved. I just had to say my piece on sports and was just sick of it. Sports culture.
In 2012, what do you think it's like for a young man to move from right outside Cincinnati to Boston now? How would that be different?
Well, it's more expensive. Things were cheaper in the 60s. The whole city was falling down, falling apart. That was the wonderful thing about the 60s. I mean, you had $100, you could open a theater company and rent a storefront, open a gallery. That was true through the 70s. The money ghetto mentality really didn't hit until the 80s. I mean, that's why we're here in this store. This whole neighborhood was supposed to be torn down when Kevin White was mayor. But we had a steep recession, and so all the money people just disappeared. And the neighbors who were already living here went up to Kevin White and said, this is going to be a historic district, and you're going to do something they do in New York, which hadn't been done here. You're going to have multiply zoned buildings rather than a single zone building. So that's why this building is commercial, residential, and all up and down the street that's true. But that didn't exist 30 years ago. And the wrecking ball would have come down and torn this down, as it did City Hall's Scully Square and all that, Old West End. So this got saved. That's why it's such a lovely little place. But I don't know what I could tell someone leaving Ohio. I don't know.
Are you glad you chose Boston in retrospect?
Yes. I haven't traveled that much, but I think it's probably the most habitable city, walkable city, though I don't walk much anymore since I'm disabled now. But I used to love, on my days off, just to walk the city, and you can do it. And each mile or two, it's a separate little community, all attached, but separate feel and a separate sort of ethos. It's just utterly charming. And it's on the coast, it's water, it's international. Kevin White, who we referred to earlier, did many good things, thankfully not knocking down this neighborhood, but did many things, saving this, not putting highways through everything. Well, the governor helped on that one too. And it's beautiful. It's just a charming city. I mean, it feels like a city. Cleveland doesn't feel like a city. Philadelphia, except for the part right on the river there, doesn't really feel like a city. Chicago, except for the Golden Mile, doesn't really feel like a city. Well, the downtown area, but I mean, you get out to the south and the west of Chicago. It's just a sprawl. I've never been to L.A. San Francisco probably feels like a city. But God's expensive.
This is one of the last independent bookstores selling new books in Boston, and one of the last gay bookstores in America. Right? Are there others that you know of?
Well, it has been a sad trajectory, hasn't it? Well, some of them didn't have to go down. I mean, Deacon, when he sold Lambda Rising, the store was still doing well, but he owned the building. He wanted to sell the building. You can't sell a building with a tenant. So he had to clear that out. That could have stayed on and on. Different Light could have stayed on, and that's a completely internal problem, why that went down. Very elaborate. It's unfortunate, but that could have lasted. Borders could have lasted too. Again, that was an internal problem. Having been flipped so many times, they were loaded with debt, and they shouldn't have flipped it. But that's the nature of capitalism. You make your money, and then you sell to someone else, and they sell to someone else. And each time it's sold, they load it up with debt. If the two original guys still had it and had only 24 stores, they'd be doing well. But the very nature of this thing is great. 24, let's do 500. Well, no one asked me, so I hold my tongue, but it just injures the culture not to have record stores and bookstores around anymore. To have a whole generation growing up just buying things online. I mean, occasionally I get some young people in here, and I had two yesterday, and it was as though they had walked through some sort of time machine or something. I don't know. It just, some people feel instantly comfortable in a shop like this, or any small shop that offers intellectual property, or a record store. I mean, imagine the fun we used to have going into record stores, and just flipping through everything, and oh look, there's that Rachmaninoff I can't find, or whatever. But these two guys came in here, it was like, they didn't get the jive at all. It was sort of sad in a way. I mean, I do get young people who come in here and buy books, ask questions, have lists, that's fine. But it may be a phenomenon of a particular time and place. And that time and place is over and gone. But what are they going to do when Amazon goes out? I mean, is that their retail experience? Just clicking and buying and not. And what do you do with expertise? My roommate worked as a classical music buyer for years at the Harvard Coop when they had a great music section, and then he moved on. He did Tower and other places. And they're all closed. They're all gone. So here's this man with this phenomenal knowledge about every recording ever made, and who sang and who produced and who conducted. And there's no job for him. It's just like completely wasted skills. And you don't get that, online. You can't talk to someone like, well, I didn't like the Mises Calamus that much. Did you have someone else early recording? And he'll have you an answer for it. You can't go to Amazon and say, because they'll just cough up their regular inventory. I don't know. I miss the face-to-face, because you actually want to go in. When HMV was over at Harvard Square, I'd go in there and buy the jazz records. And there was always some guy there, and he looked like completely out of Dobie Gillis or something. And I said, well, you know, I have this Chris Connor thing, and I want this, that, and the other. Something from the 50s. Black or white, doesn't matter. Oh, here, well, here's what you want. And it was great. I mean, he knew what he was talking about. But maybe that's going out the window, too. Everyone has an expert opinion on everything. And no one knows anything. So, we'll see. But yeah, I intend to hang around as long as I can. I'm not in the best of health, so we'll see where that goes too.
Well, I want to end with end for now.
Uh-huh.
With a question I have to ask. You may not like it. I can't help but notice you're dressed as a police officer?
Not really. I do buy my clothes out of a uniform catalog. A, because they're durable, and B, because they're cheap. And I like the look. It sort of butches me up a little bit.
Thank you.
My pleasure.